morning, I'm Sebastian Perez Ferreiro, Managing Editor of News at BNamericas. Our 2023 Mining Outlook report is published, and in this video, our content team will be telling us what to expect from the industry in the next 12 months. Sliding metal prices combined with persistent inflationary pressure and the threat of a global recession provide the backdrop for the mining industry as we head into the new year. After hitting records in 2021 and 2022, metal prices are forecast to decline in 2023. Some forecasts see a 7% drop for copper to a sharp 33% drop for lithium. The consensus forecast for other key Latin American mining products, including gold, nickel, zinc, and iron ore, also indicate lower prices in 2023, a trend that will squeeze margins compared to the last 2 years. However, prices remain historically high, and Latin American producers' strong cost positions, combined with weak local currencies, will help them keep the cash flowing. Laura Superno, BNamericas Managing Editor for Research, is joined by Rogerio Gelmayer, our Bureau Chief for Brazil, Sharai Angulo, our Mexico Mining Reporter, Eleanor Treble-Cock, Southern Cone Mining Reporter, and Luis Altamirano, Mining Reporter for Peru. Laura, welcome.
Thank you, Sebastian. What we're seeing in terms of this context of lower prices is not so much necessarily a pullback in investment due to prices, but rather the broader economic trends that have also brought lower prices have created some uncertainty, namely this possibility of global recession that you mentioned and what that might mean for industrial growth in the near term. There is, however, a broad consensus that a few years from now, the markets for many of the elements that are key to the energy transition, including copper and lithium, will begin to see growing deficits that will strongly support prices. Our perspective on this is that now would be the right time for companies to make decisions and start to move projects toward production. As you know, however, that can be easier said than done. Miners will be grappling with significant risk and uncertainty in some of the region's most important mining countries. So what we're mainly going to cover with the team here today is what people should watch out for in Latin America's key markets in terms of navigating the risks, and also where we see some opportunities coming through and projects going ahead. So we're going to start at the top, so to speak, and work our way down across the region. That means we'll go to Sharai Angulo in Mexico. Sharai, welcome.
Hi, Laura, how are you?
Very good, thank you. It's good to see you here. So in Mexico, we've seen the conditions for mining investment become markedly more difficult over the last few years. Two problems that have emerged for miners are a moratorium on new mineral concessions and greater difficulties in permitting, with permitting times becoming longer. And even we've had the Environment Ministry, Semarnat, ¿cierto? Say that it intends to try to block future open pit projects. How are these points affecting mining investor sentiment in the country? And have you seen any indications that we could see any positive change in 2023?
Well, Laura, as we know, since leftist President Andrés Manuel López Obrador took office in 2018, mining companies in Mexico are facing a heavy cocktail of risks that weigh on investments. That's the reason because last month, the Mexican Mining Chamber, CAMIMEX, told BNamericas that they were forecasting a drop even this year, despite their initial projections. Actually, they are probably expecting another drop in 2023, basically because there is a slimmer pipeline of projects. We don't have new mineral concessions Since 2018, actually, during the 4 years of this government, we haven't had any new concession in Mexico, and there are also delays in permits and all kind of bureaucracy related to these concessions to be used, and that's the reason, because they are expecting that the investments we will see is just because of the pipeline that is already going on. So this is a really gloomy future for the mining industry in Mexico for 2023 as well. Even actually, they are expecting a drop of 15% maybe this year, but they are waiting for the final figures, because in preliminary data published by the Ministry of Economy in Mexico, they are already seeing a drop of almost 56% in foreign direct investment in mining in Mexico.
Okay, so that larger drop is in the foreign direct investment, and Camimex, the mining chamber, is also forecasting a drop in mining investment. So it sounds like
for next year, they think the foreign direct investment could be around the $4,000 million stagnant investment in the sector.
Okay, I see. So with the difficulties in projects getting permitting, what I'm hearing is not many new projects are likely to enter construction next year, or yeah. So
exactly.
You mentioned that there will be projects going ahead, the ones that are already committed or underway. You know, what are the most important ones there? You know, what kind of milestones can we look forward to next year in terms of the projects that are going ahead?
Well, despite of the slowness in the permitting process, we have seen some exception. For example, in Media Luna project in Torres, they already got the environmental permit in Mexico. It's called MIA here, Manifiesto de Impacto Ambiental. So that's an important, this is a key permit to go ahead with their plan. So this is one of the main projects we are gonna see ramping on in the next year. Also, Juanicipio from Fresnillo company was fully connected to the power grid, so they are also on time with their schedule. These are projects that already got their permit. I don't remember which other, but it's the same pipeline that we have been seeing during this year. You know, it's just that the time is the only factor that could be affected by these permits, and fortunately, at least these more advanced projects are still going on.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, so there's some activity, but with those difficulties for some projects. Looking over at Central America and the Caribbean, what are the few of the key, expectations or things that we should be watching out for going into 2023?
Well, in Central America, this is a trend that we are gonna see more often all over the world, Mexico included. It's that social conflicts related to the environmental problems, but also indigenous problems, are waiting a lot in the approval of these mining projects. And that's the reason because, for example, in Dominican Republic, we don't have news on their, let me check the name, on the Pueblo Viejo mine from Barrick Gold Corporation since April, because they are still arguing or trying to pick a new place for a tailing storage facility. These kind of conflicts are delaying a lot these projects in the area. That's this case, and also we have a similar problem in Guatemala because they had a public consultation on a project on the project Cerro Blanco of the Canadian of a Canadian miner, and they are still waiting for a final approval to go ahead with their plans, despite the fact that the Energy Ministry said that this initiative of the public consultation was illegal. No, so these are the factors that in this moment are blocking that these mining projects go ahead. And actually today we are expecting the final agreement between Minera Panamá and the government about their Cobre Panamá mine. The last news we had this week is that they were like in a loop. I mean, they are not making too much advance. Minera Panamá said that they had offered a fair proposal, but the government wasn't sure last week that the terms of this agreement are the terms they are expecting to get with Minera Panamá. So today we must know if there is going to be a new agreement, more beneficial for the government, or if we are going to keep waiting for another one or another round of negotiation, actually.
Right, which will determine, I guess, the trajectory of that project next year, which is one of the big ones in that area of the region.
Yes, the government is expecting to get 10 times more incomes from the royalties of fees that this mining company used to give to the state in the past. That's the main problem.
I see.
Yeah. Minera Panamá is trying to get safety clause, no, for the future of the company.
Right, to avoid future changes in tax conditions.
And guarantees, also depending on the price of the metals, no? Because,
yeah, complicated negotiations, to be sure. Thank you very much, Sharai, for joining us and sharing the insights on Mexico.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, thank you. We'll turn now to Luis Altamirano in Lima. Good morning.
Hi, Laura.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So looking at what's happening in Peru, it's just one fun thing after the other, right?
Yeah, you're sure right about that.
The political instability there has been pretty constant over the last few years, definitely impacting the investment climate. And if we look at mining in particular, it really hasn't translated into unfavorable legislation or, tax changes, but it has apparently been very unfavorable in terms of its impact on social license processes, which is probably the biggest challenge for miners in Peru. I'd like you to please give us some context around that situation and what you expect to see next year.
No, basically, given what you just said, the whole mining focus for 2023 and basically 2024 is basically focusing on ongoing projects, brownfield projects. That has been the main theme or trend in the Peruvian mining, because it is really hard to get new projects. There are a lot of projects, like for example, Tia Maria, that hasn't seen any light since many years ago, and that will probably intensify due to the considerations that new governors have been elected in key regions that are not in favor of mining, which is specifically the case of Tia Maria with southern copper. This is already known. At the first, Pedro Castillo's new government was claiming that they were going to raise the taxes, they were going to do some major changes in the economy, but at the end, this didn't happen because the congressman, basically the executive, the former Ministry of Finance, realized that it was not a good time to raise the taxes, and actually they prolonged the return of the mining taxes up until 2027 in order to improve and to foment exploring mining activities, which is the main aspect to figure out in the long term. There are a lot of brownfield projects that are going to take place in the next years. Of course, there are some delays, but the key aspect is resolving and giving the incentives to promote more exploring activities. This has been one of the key aspects that were, for example, mentioned in Perumin in the last convention in the last week of September. But for now, the key aspect to improve and to promote new exploring activities was just the extent of the return of the income of the mining royalties, in the case specifically on mining exploring activities.
Perfect. And looking, you mentioned Tia Maria, which has had big social challenges. Now that Pedro Castillo is out, even, which is quite surprising, and changes in the ministries. It's been difficult for the government to approach social license problems because over the last over the years the state has participated with companies in this triangle of community, state, company, trying to get social license for projects. Is there any hope there? That, because on the one hand, the change, the changes create this instability. On the other hand, there have been a lot of critiques that Pedro Castillo as president has been just almost absent in terms of trying to or detracting actually from the processes. What's your take on that in terms of the social license processes in particular?
In terms of the social license process and the approach of the companies, basically the company, because sometimes you do not see so much of a participative state in some key problems, is that there's not a clear path or articulation of efforts regarding the whole social conflict. You see specific mining enterprises focusing on their problems, but you don't see like a whole solving process. You see, for example, I don't remember exactly, but in August, Las Bambas had some agreements with the local communities. But 2 weeks later, you see down in the south, maybe in Cusco, new problems in, for example, Antapacay. They're not exactly tied, but the problem is that you don't see a clear reaction or a clear followment from the government that allows, for example, to preview these scenarios and then take action specifically to control them and to foment some of the key aspects. In terms of production, currently this whole political situation, because as I assume most of you know, Pedro Castillo has been impeached. We have a new president, the seventh president in 7 years. Well, it's also the first woman to be in charge of the maximum charge in Peru. Is that throughout many of these protests are right now currently switching to some specific sectors. We saw some riots in airports, we saw some riots in some massive consumption industries, and in the case of mining for now, we've seen so many roadblocks. And one of the aspects that is currently key, and maybe we should see it in the next year also, because these social conflicts are going to keep happening, considering the situation right now and some demands from specific regions that demand not only new elections, new congressmen, and also a new constitution, which we definitely change the rules, or at least the process. It's like there's a lot of willing of change, but not exactly everybody knows how to do it. This is going to do some roadblocks, and for example, Las Bambas may have some trouble with the storage of all their copper production, considering the fact that they have not been able to move many of the concentrators of coppers since the past weeks. That could be an issue for the next months, and I don't know exactly for 2023. Storage, this is definitely going to be an aspect for them to take in consideration. But regarding the whole mining industry, taking in consideration, moving apart this specific scenario, we should see in 2023 an increase in the mining production, basically because we should see a recovery from key mining like Las Bambas, also the key projects from Tia Maria, also from Cerro Verde, but specifically now that we will have a full year of operation of Quellaveco, which was the main aspect, that was the main mining project to happen, that was already announced many years ago, but it started production this year. It has already helped to improve the copper production numbers, as we can see in the publication from the Ministry of Mining. But next year it's going to be a good one in terms of production, because many of the mining industries or companies that were stopped, first of all because of the riots that also happened this year. This is basically Cuajone and Las Bambas, which were stopped for more than 50 years. We're hoping, considering that there's not more riots to happen in this year, to return and to normalize their production, considering the fact that now Quellaveco, which has a capacity of around 3,000 tons of copper per year, should add a lot of copper in terms of production. The main problem is that we are going to see a diminish in the mining investment, specifically because there are no more new projects, and it's basically just mining investments for the maintenance of current projects, for the maintenance of the ongoing operations, but not so much of the exploring activities that could take a while and that also demand sometimes more capital from the companies.
Very interesting. Interesting situation in Peru. I'd like to ask you also about, Peru's neighbors, Andean neighbors, Colombia and Ecuador. Just in general, what are the key factors that we should be considering, in approaching 2023 in those countries?
Yes, same as Peru, but in a more organized way, I could see. These countries are gonna start the year with some important rule changes up in the air that will create some uncertainty when it comes to mining investment, and specifically about preventing the advance of projects. Specifically in the case of Colombia, the congressman approved President Gustavo Petro's tax reform in November, which the sector thinks that it may switch it and make it less attractive. Specifically, this reform eliminates the deduction of the mining royalties from income tax, and it will raise the income tax on thermal coal producers, which is not so good seen by the mining industry down there. There's also an important atmosphere of uncertainty regarding some announced reforms of the environmental code and the use of the law of the new land Some of these modifications of the environmental system and new mechanism of citizenship participation in the environmental processes may change some aspects, and it's still under review because it's a whole different change of way of government previous to the previous president in Colombia. There are many proposals of reform. There are many proposals of changes, specifically in the law that we're gonna see in the next year. But still, in 2023 and 2024, we expect to see some progress in the environmental licenses process of 3 basically important projects: Santa Matias, Quebradona, and Mocoa. That's the main scenario. We're going to see some key aspects on these projects. In Ecuador, for the other hand, which is currently under President Guillermo Lazo's period of government, the National Assembly is working on some regulations for the country's pure consultation law. Even though Lazo has the power to issue some transitory regulations for the prior of consultation, the process in the Assembly is creating some uncertainty. There are several projects in Ecuador right now looking to close and to seek those environmental licenses, which are really important, and definitely advance them to be able to produce and to move as they are scheduled. The main projects to watch in this for the next years are definitely El Dom, which is near to include, also La Plata, which should start construction by the end of 2023. A key aspect, for example, in Lazo has been more of a president well, he's clearly not a leftist, but he was a former banker, I'm not exactly sure, but he faces a clear opposition of the currently in the Assembly, which makes him very difficult to advance in any legislation. Some positive aspect in the case of Ecuador is that we should see the opening of the registry of mining properties, which was closed in 2018. This will allow to make new concessions for new operators, same as Colombia and basically the same as Peru. Ecuador is experiencing some intense projects by local population, indigenous organizations in 2022, which is gonna extend throughout these years, and it's gonna be something to watch, because this desire of some new changes, some new social rules, it's not exclusive from Peru, it's not exclusive from Colombia, not exclusive to Ecuador. There's a lot of population demands from some aspects that are gonna be key aspects for some changes from some regulations, or hopefully also from some opening of new projects or processes for us to, for the whole country, for the whole region, to start moving or shifting the mining industry to a more equalized development that will depend on the politicians or how well they're gonna change or adapt these reforms, considering all these aspects mentioned.
Yeah, you're right, Luis. I think over the last few years, I at least have noticed how, the social and political risks are more and more intertwined. Social demands lead to political change. The political establishment responds to communities in a different way than it may be used to, and companies have to really stay on their toes and see how they can best manage those processes.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Luis. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
We will move on now to the Southern Cone. Eleanor in Santiago, please join me.
Hi, Laura. Can you see me?
Hi. Yeah. Hi, Eleanor. Good to see you.
Very nice to see you.
Yeah. So in Chile, the big overarching question is probably the constitutional process. We know that this weighed very heavily on investor sentiment this year, probably last year as well. The rejection of the draft, constitutional proposal in September was applauded by the business community, but did leave uncertainty about the path ahead. And in recent days, Congress has just approved a new format for a new process to take place. So initially, the idea was we would revert to the old constitution, and for the meantime, we have, but there's going to be a new process to write a new draft. How can you, what do you expect in terms of the impacts on the mining sector in particular, and what mining players are going to be thinking about this next year?
Well, the basis of the new constitutional process have been well received by the main national mining associations in Chile. This because of the new format, because it will include an assembly of 15 members chosen by popular election, and a 24-member expert committee, and also a 14-member technical committee. These two committees of experts will be elected by the National Congress. So the positive thing about this new constitutional process is that the drafting of the new constitution draft will be in hands of people more specialized in the topics, with the participation of jurists, lawyers, and with more involvement of the political establishment as compared to the previous process. So it is considered that it will facilitate a better proposal for the country. We should remember, Laura, that the previous constitutional process in Chile, the majority of citizens, almost 602% of the voters in Chile, rejected the proposal, mainly because it was considered that it was made by people non-experts and with little knowledge in the industry, in particular in mining. So the delivery for in this new process, the delivery of the draft of the new constitution was set for October of next year, while the national plebiscite to ratify the decision will be voted on November 26th of 2023. So everyone, in particular the mining sector, trusts in a better result.
Okay, well that sounds positive to start off at least. And the constitutional process is not the only, politically oriented issue that we need to be aware of in Chile in 2023. Can you tell us what to expect in terms of changes to the mining code and also the ongoing tax and royalty proposals for the mining sector?
Yes, the regulatory environment in Chile continues to be a great threat for miners, especially because of the uncertainties in the regulatory aspect with the discussion of the royalty project, the royalty bill, that, as you said, is still under discussion. But also because of the entry into force of the mining code reform that will enter into force in February of next year, which the Chilean mining ministry is trying to postpone, because if it enters into course, it will bring a lot of problems for miners due to the increase in the cost of the exploration and exploitation patents, which would be progressively every year, in addition to various other technical changes, as the change in the system that is used to geographically delimit mining properties in our country, whose change must be made in short terms, about 6 months. So according to all the analysts and the discussions, because the mining industry is having a lot of discussion about this mining code reform, there's a lot of risk of losing mining concessions. So, as I said, the idea is to postpone, and the mining ministry is trying to already send a proposal to the Congress to postpone the validity of this law, the 21,420, it's the Ley 21.420. So that's, I think, royalty bill and this reform to the mining code as a big threat, as I said, to the miners.
Certainly, I think it's been causing stress for a while, and it's not over yet. So given this context, looking at this political risk situation, what type of projects will see the most progress next year in Chile?
Well, about investments for next year, the State Cooper Commission, Cochilco, has just released a new investment pipeline outlook that did not appear in our mining outlook because it was published just after the end of our mining report. But this latest report shows a project portfolio from these years until 2031 with 53 initiatives that are valued at more than $73,000 million. This is an increase of just 6.9% compared to the last year's mining portfolio, which of course has been seen as something negative by our national mining associations because it only involves 2 new projects compared to the last Cochilco reports. So it is essential to Chile, for Chile to attract mining investments. Perhaps something interesting that to observe in this 53 project is that 24 initiatives consider the use of desalinated water or responsible use of water. But of course, the domain of the project will continue to be in the mining of copper and lithium, which comprise the country's 2 main mining products. And there are several plans in pipeline to increase production to respond to the high demand arising from the global energy transition, of course, because these minerals are critical. So for this reason, we will see a certain dynamism in 2023 compared to this year. In particular, to project that seeks to reduce carbon and water footprints to achieve carbon neutrality in 2040. That is a goal that was set by our national mining policy. In this sense, it is expected more supply for energy renewable source and more use of desalinated water, as I said, in mining operations. And what can I say? Regarding the main desalination project, I would like to mention, for example, the Antofagasta Minerals plant that forms part of the INCO complementary infrastructure project at Los Pelambres mine. Also, the one that belongs to our state copper company Codelco in its northern district desalination project, and also the TEX Quebrada Blanca Phase 2 desalination plant. All are located in Chile's arid north, which is an area with great water scarcity.
Indeed, yeah. It's interesting to hear that half or more than half of the projects are in the Cochilco pipeline now are highly focused on their water source, not only desalination, but also different ways of responsible water use, which theoretically could help with permitting and social issues. We'll see how that goes. Looking over at Argentina, what would you highlight, Eleanor, as the main risks for mining players in the country in 2023? There are several, so let's which are the most important ones to pay attention to, and where might opportunities be found in the country for next year?
Well, inflation in Argentina will be almost 100% annually in both this year's and the 2023, according to several forecasts from economic analysts. In other words, it is expected that inflation will not move away from the 6% per month in the next 7 months. So this, of course, is a great risk for the sustainability of the mining industry in Argentina due to the impact of the rise in the operating cost. On the other hand, investment in Argentina is the highest in the last 10 years, standing at 22% of the gross domestic product, the GDP. This was stated by the Secretary of the Industry and Productive Development in Argentina, Ignacio de Mendiguren. So therefore, it is feared that there could be a disincentive to investment in mining, especially from Western companies by 2023. Argentina mining already faced a complex year this year due to inflation, the rising production costs, dollar restrictions for the purchase of critical inputs, in mining operation. So this scenario makes it difficult to start a good year 2023 and make it difficult to make accurate projections for next year. However, there's a lot of hope in lithium project. Lithium has been one of the projects that have moved the most in recent years in Argentina due to the high demand and prices resulting from the electric vehicle and renewable energy markets worldwide, within, again, in the context of the global energy transition. According to estimates from the Argentine Ministry of Productive Development, national production could increase 6 times during the next 5 years, with the startup of new lithium projects that are currently under construction or in the process of the expansion. Some of the main lithium projects that I can mention is the one from the Australian firm Alchem, with its project Sal de Vida in the Salar del Hombre Muerto in Catamarca province, which initial production would be 15,000 per year of lithium carbonate from the second half of next year. In the same period, the Cauchari Olaroz project is expected to come online with production of 40,000 per year of lithium carbonate, which is controlled by the local firm Exar in a joint venture with BNamericas, Gafgan Lithium, and the state company called HEMSE. And by the end of 2023, it is also expected that Tres Quebradas project belonging to China's Zijin Mining, which is designed to produce 20,000 of lithium carbonate per year. So there's a good scenario of new projects in lithium, especially in Argentina, but it's very important to improve the political and especially the economic scenario in the Argentina. So far, the only lithium producers are just two companies, the American Livent and the Sales de Jujuy. So they are all in Argentina expecting a big increase in the lithium production from next year. But as I said, will depend a lot of the economic scenario for the 2023.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Thank you very much, Eleanor, for your comments.
Thank you.
And now, last but not least, we will move over to Brazil with Rogério Gelmayer. Welcome, Rogério. Good to see you.
Hello, Laura. Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning. So, you know, Brazil, we've talked about this, has been kind of a bright spot in the region in terms of the outlook for mining investment in the last couple of years, or the outlook for mining in general, mining conditions. Now, what we have is former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva coming back to office to lead the country once again as of January. So what changes can we expect in terms of mining policy and the investment climate with, you know, the return of Lula?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. So first of all, I don't expect any radical move in the mining segment under Lula administration. And what explained that are two main points about that. The first is that the Lula administration is aware about the importance of the revenues from tax collection within the mining segment. And the second point is that different compared with other segments in Brazil, there is no state-run company operating directly in the mining segment. For example, you have Petrobras working in the oil and the gas industry, and you have state-run banks provide interference in the banking segment. We don't have this kind of situation, so the influence of the government or of the federal administration is very limited in terms of the mining segment. However, it's important to point that Lula, during his campaign, his presidential campaign, talk a lot about the environmental regulations in Brazil. Lula is likely to improve and turn the process for environmental license more rigid. So I expect the changes about that, which can cause delay in terms of advances of projects to obtain license, especially environmental license, to advance with that. And also, it's important to mention that Lula still did not unveil the name of the new minister of mines and the energy. So you need to look for more time, to look for more guidance with the announcement of the name, to have a more clear scenario about that for the next year.
Sure, still waiting for some definitions there from the new government as it comes in and settles in, and certainly. You know, there was quite a bit of pressure around possible tax and royalty increases on the sector. Some months ago, this has maybe eased up a little bit now, but you know, could we see a renewed focus on mining as a, you mentioned that they know it's very important as a revenue source. You know, could that take us to a point where they're looking again to try to increase the tax burden?
Yes, as you mentioned very well, Laura, you needed to back a little bit on the past. During the first months of the pandemic, the COVID-19, you had a lot of pressure inside the Brazilian government and the Brazilian Congress for the increase of taxes against the mining segment, because the mining segment performed very well compared with the others. And the government then was looking for extra revenues to cover social programs. This kind of pressure will reduce a lot in recent months, because the performance of the segment right now is more neutral, is not so good as it was 2 years ago. And also, you needed to mention that the mining companies, mining players in Brazil are very, very powerful inside the Congress. And any tax increase needs the final approval from the Congress. The companies are able to limit this kind of pressure. But of course, looking for the next year, Brazil, in terms of the federal government, Lula administration will be obligated to looking for extra revenues, and the increase of taxes will be the main source of that, and the mining segment likely to be one of the focus again. And also you needed to mention about the state governments, because in Brazil the mining activity faces taxation from the federal and also from the state governments. And you have a lot of state governments here in Brazil face fiscal pressures, and also these local governments likely to pressure for more tax increases, and this is an ongoing pressure to look for the next year.
Okay, so not totally over yet. Something that might likely to be continue to be in the discussion next year.
Exactly.
I have one more point. I'd be interested in hearing your opinions regarding Brazil and your comments. Mining production in the country has very long been concentrated in iron ore. I think iron ore still makes up the great majority of mining revenues, mining exports revenues. But there has been a growing focus on diversification. There have been more companies arriving, perhaps with different focuses, and also a certain government effort there to attract investment in other minerals. What do you see happening with this trend next year, both from that industry standpoint and from a policy standpoint?
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, Laura, because I see efforts from the government side looking for more diversification of the segment, and also I see a lot of efforts from companies, because the companies wanted to diversify their activities to attend the energy transition. For example, if you're looking for Vale is one of the largest company in the world in terms of iron ore production, And right now, Vale is very concentrated, is focused in expanding the production of the copper and the nickel as well. So this kind of mining goods, nickel and the copper, likely to gain ground in Brazil in the next years, and the projects on those segments like to gain ground due to those efforts. And also back into the government strategies. I'd like to mention that the Lula administration is providing friendly signs of approach to United States and also to Europe. And the Brazilian government likely to promote the trade activity with those two regions of the world, and the mining segment likely to be positively affected because the mining segment in Brazil can turn an important supplier for those regions in the world.
Certainly, and areas like you say that are already very strong in renewable power, for example, with a focus on decarbonization that is a little bit earlier stage here in Latin America, but is a lot more advanced in Europe and the United States. And as you say, operators looking to diversify in Brazil, particularly with that focus on energy transition minerals.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, very interesting. Well, thank you very much, Rogério, for sharing your comments about Brazil.
Thank you, Laura.
So with that, we will conclude today's session about the mining outlook in Latin America for 2023. Thank you very much to Eleanor, Luis, Rogério, and Charay. I would also like to remind all of our BNamericas clients that our mining outlook report is ready to read or download in the report section of our platform. Wishing everyone a very nice day.